What's up guys, D2 from DTwoAOV.com here with a little bit of a different kind of video for you today. This time we're going to be going over 4 mechanics in the game of Arena of Valor that you may or may not have known about. Now if you want to see more of these types of videos, or if you know of some very unusual mechanics that maybe only you know about, let me know in the comments down below. Alright, the first hero we're going to talk about here is Max and the interaction between his ultimate and his passive. Now, Max's passive, if you didn't know, is called Static Shock, and what it does is every time Max damages an enemy, he applies a shock that deals true damage every second for 3 seconds. It's kind of just like a poison effect. Now, how that works with his ultimate is kind of strange, because his ultimate kind of interacts with the enemy, but doesn't damage them, because it locates everyone on the map, gives that global vision, right? Now, the developers made sure that the ult didn't provide static shock to the entire opposing team. That would be a little bit unfair, but you can tell that it's interacting with the opposing team because sometimes Max will randomly steal a kill from across the map without having done anything, right? It happens quite a bit if you play with a Max player. Now, normally this wouldn't be a big deal other than a random kill steal here and there, but where it does come into play is with the item Spear of Longinus, and yes, that's how it's pronounced. So what happens is, with Max's ultimate liftoff, because you're applying sort of a pseudo-static shock to the opposing team, you're interacting with them without actually dealing damage. When you have Spear of Longinus equipped, it actually lowers the entire opposing team's armor by 150 because it ticks 3 times, right? So, 50 armor break per stack on Spear of Longinus times 3 is 150. Now, if you look at Thane's armor right here, you can see it going down by 50 every single second. Now, what I didn't know when I first figured out this bug, or whatever you want to call it, is that the Spear of Longinus effect only applies at the very beginning when Max pops the ult and gives vision of the entire opposing team. So if you look at this clip, you'll see that every single time, right when I pop my ult, the Spear of Longinus will immediately go in effect and it'll provide those ticks and go, 1, 2, 3, and provide 50, then 100, then 150 off. But once the 3rd tick goes off, from there, it's exactly 5 seconds until the Spear of Longinus effect wears off, regardless of whether or not I start the lift-off process, basically the second part of the ultimate. Now, why that's important is because unless you're somewhat close to your target and you immediately go right after you pop the first stage of your ultimate, then you yourself are not necessarily going to benefit from that armor break onto the opposing team. Now, what you can do is just help from across the map, help your entire team if they're in a team fight, and just pop your ult, give your entire team the 150 armor break onto the opposing team, and you don't even have to fly across the map in order to help your team out. But just keep in mind that you yourself might not be as effective as if you had something like Rank Breaker. Alright, the next hero I want to talk about is the Joker, and the fact that the numbers in his passive ability just do not add up. Now, if you look at his passive ability, it says that every time it's available, you deal 200 plus 100% attack damage, physical damage, and that means you're basically doing just a tiny bit more damage than you normally do, right? Just basically 200 more, but people who have played Joker know that that's not the case. You can see right here as I'm attacking onto these minions. By the way, I'm attacking minions because they have no armor, so no extra calculations required. You can see that the numbers definitely do not add up. And a while ago, I actually went back and checked to see what the numbers were through a bunch of math, through a bunch of trial and error. And the actual damage is 200 plus 20 per level plus 200% attack damage. So the real damage is basically twice as much as you would expect it to be. You can actually check this yourself in training. Keep in mind, though, that if you do check this in training, that numbers are going to be a couple of points off here and there. If you've ever tried to test something to see if the numbers match or what have you, then they're always going to be a variable, right? It'll go, something will be 50 damage, something will be 51, something will be 49. Just keep that in mind. If you're like, oh no, D2's numbers are 1 off, just keep that in mind. You guys probably have a general sense of how much damage the passive does, but for those of you who are getting in the game for the first time and you look at his passive and say, that doesn't look so great, trust me, it's much better than it seems. The next hero is Maganga and his passive, and basically how the numbers above heroes' heads work. Now, let's just start off with the fact that you never see numbers atop minions or monsters' heads, as you can see here, even though the actual damage is going up. So as you can see on this monster right now, it starts with a 1, then goes to a 2, then goes to a 3, even though you can't actually see the number, because you can tell that the poison damage is rising. Now, I actually agree with the decision not to have the numbers above minions and monsters, because that would just get really cumbersome on the map. But another thing that people might not know is that when you pop your ultimate, it does not actually reset the amount of poison that's being dealt. I'm not actually sure why they have it reset like that, because if you look at his ultimate, I believe like in the past, his ultimate may have shown, or the description may have said that the stacks are reset, but it doesn't even show that anymore, so I don't even know why they have the number set anymore, because it doesn't reset the poison damage. And it doesn't even reset the ult damage either. I thought for a moment there that as I was testing it, like, oh, maybe it's because the amount of damage for the next ult resets. But that's actually not the case either if you test this out in training. So basically, the number, it only applies if it's to a hero and if Maganga hasn't used his ultimate yet. If he has used his ultimate, then I don't know, assume that there's more, assume that there's a bunch of stacks in there, because you could literally see 0 stacks and it actually has 5 stacks of damage. So don't think you're safe if you're running away and you don't see any number on your top of your head, or you think it's just a 1, because you very well might actually have a 5. And the last hero is Alice and her second ability, Friendship, which speeds you up by what seems to be 30%, but in reality is 50%. Actually, it's 50% at the start, then it decays to 30% before decaying to 0. I figured this out because with the old Ring of the Fiend that provided 50% movement speed, I said often on the Valor series cast that she can get to 800 movement speed, and this was something that I tested in-game, or I just was in-game and I saw often that she was at 800, the maximum movement speed. And then I thought about it for a second, I'm like, wait a second. She's doing this like easily. Like she would have just normal boots, like not even upgraded boots, and she'd easily get to 800 movement speed. I'm like, wait a second, 1.8 times just over 400 is not equal to 800. So I went and checked, and it is indeed the fact that her Friendship does speed you up more than 30%. It indeed does 50% at the very beginning of it. I think in the first 0.5 seconds or so, maybe even longer than that. It's hard to tell because, how fast can you... I don't really want to measure how long it takes for me to press the side button. You guys can do that on your own. But basically, the start is 50%, then it decays 30%, then it decays to 0. One thing to keep in mind as Alice, because she can make you zoom across the field. Alright guys, that's it for me today. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what other unusual things in the game that people might not know about. And make sure you subscribe to the channel, make sure you press the bell, make sure you go to DTwoAOV.com for more guides and news, and I'll see you guys next time.